The night sky above the dense forest was unusually clear, dotted with countless stars that seemed to shimmer like diamonds against a velvet canvas. Somewhere deep within this wilderness, far from the noise of human civilization, an eerie silence blanketed the trees. But that quiet was about to be shattered. A streak of light tore through the heavens, moving at impossible speed before breaking apart into fiery fragments. It wasn't a meteor. It was something else entirely. An alien vessel, sleek and angular, tumbled out of control as smoke trailed behind it. Its hull glowed orange where flames licked its surface, and sparks flew off jagged edges torn open by some unseen force. Inside, alarms blared in harsh tones, flashing red lights casting long shadows across the interior. At the center of the chaos lay Princess Lyrael, heir to the throne of Ondarian, clutching her side as pain radiated through her body. Her once pristine armor, made of a material that shimmered faintly even in darkness, now bore cracks glowing faintly blue, a sign of its failing energy. Blood, blue-green and viscous, oozed from wounds she couldn't fully see. She tried to steady herself, but the ship lurched violently again, throwing her against the wall. Her mind raced. What had gone wrong? Moments ago, she'd been en route to a diplomatic summit on a neutral planet, carrying critical information meant to broker peace between warring factions. Then came the ambush, ships appearing out of nowhere, weapons firing without warning. Her crew fought valiantly, but one by one, they fell. And when escape became the only option, she barely managed to launch her personal craft, only for it to sustain heavy damage moments later. Now here she was, plummeting toward an unknown world with no allies, no backup, and no way to contact her people. Her thoughts turned grim. Would anyone come for her? Or would Ondarian assume she was dead, lost forever to the void of space? As if answering those fears, the ship gave another violent shudder. Warning messages scrolled across holographic displays in her native tongue, though she could barely focus on them through the haze of pain. The engines were failing. Atmospheric entry was imminent. Survival felt less like a certainty and more like a desperate gamble. With a deafening roar, the ship broke through Earth's atmosphere, heat engulfing its exterior. Trees below swayed wildly as shockwaves rippled outward, animals scattering in panic. Finally, with a thunderous crash, the vessel slammed into the ground, sending up a massive plume of dirt and smoke. For several seconds, there was nothing but silence, an unnatural stillness settling over the area. Miles away, nestled in a modest cabin surrounded by towering pines, Eli Carter sat hunched over his workbench. His fingers moved deftly as he adjusted the delicate mechanisms of a small drone designed to study local plant life. He preferred solitude, having chosen to live off-grid after years spent disillusioned with society's relentless pace. Here, amidst nature's serenity, he found solace. But tonight, something felt different. He glanced up just in time to see a brilliant streak flash across the window. At first, he thought it might be a shooting star, a rare treat. But then came the unmistakable rumble of impact. The entire cabin shook slightly, rattling the jars of preserved specimens lining his shelves. What on earth was that? Eli muttered aloud, rising from his chair. Grabbing a flashlight and a sturdy walking stick, he stepped outside. The air smelled faintly of burnt metal, and the distant glow of fire illuminated the horizon beyond the tree line. Whatever it was, it hadn't landed far from his property. Curiosity gnawed at him. Though cautious by nature, Eli couldn't ignore the pull of mystery. After slipping on a jacket and grabbing a basic first aid kit, he set off toward the crash site. The journey took longer than expected. Thick underbrush slowed his progress, and the uneven terrain tested his balance. As he drew closer, the scent of charred debris grew stronger, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp soil. Finally, he emerged into a clearing and froze. Before him lay the wreckage of what could only be described as a spacecraft. Twisted shards of metal jutted out at odd angles, their surfaces etched with patterns unlike anything human-made. Smoke curled lazily into the air, and scattered pieces of alien technology glinted faintly under the moonlight. Then he saw her. Near the center of the wreckage, partially buried beneath rubble, lay a figure unmistakably not of this world. Her skin shimmered faintly, almost translucent, and her elongated limbs suggested a physiology adapted for environments vastly different from Earth's. A faint blue glow emanated from cracks in her damaged armor, pulsing weakly like a heartbeat. Eli hesitated, torn between instinctive fear and overwhelming curiosity. Slowly he approached, crouching beside her. Her breathing was shallow, labored, and her eyes fluttered as if caught between consciousness and oblivion. Despite her otherworldly appearance, she looked fragile, vulnerable in a way that tugged at something deep within him. "Hey," he whispered softly, unsure if she could understand. "You're going to be okay." Using the tools he'd brought, Eli carefully cleared away debris pinning her down. He winced at the sight of her injuries, but pushed aside his discomfort. With steady hands, he applied antiseptic to her wounds and wrapped them with clean bandages. It wasn't much, but it was all he could do for now. As he worked, questions flooded his mind. Who, or what, was she? Where had she come from? And why did she look so regal? There was something undeniably noble about her presence, even in her current state. When he finished tending to her, Eli stood back, watching as her chest rose and fell in slow, rhythmic breaths. Whatever had brought her here, whatever dangers pursued her, they could wait until morning. For now, she was safe, or as safe as she could be in the middle of a forest, miles from anyone who might help. The first light of dawn filtered through the trees, painting the forest floor in soft hues of gold and amber. Birds chirped lazily, their melodies weaving a peaceful backdrop to what had been a night of chaos. Eli Carter sat cross-legged near the makeshift camp he'd set up beside the alien wreckage, his eyes fixed on the strange figure lying motionless under a blanket. Her breathing was steady now, though her faintly glowing skin still gave off an otherworldly aura that made him uneasy and curious. He hadn't slept all night, too preoccupied with questions swirling in his mind. Who was she? What was she doing here? And most importantly, why had no one come for her yet? The crash site was eerily quiet save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. If her people were looking for her, they weren't close by. As sunlight bathed the clearing, Eli noticed subtle changes in her condition. The cracks in her armor pulsed less frequently, their glow dimming as if the energy sustaining them was fading. Her wounds seemed stable, for now, but he knew she needed proper care beyond what he could provide with rudimentary supplies. Still, something about her presence compelled him to stay. Hours passed, and just as Eli began debating whether to move her closer to his cabin, her eyelids fluttered open. For a moment, confusion clouded her expression as she took in her surroundings, the unfamiliar forest, the remnants of her ship, and finally, the human kneeling beside her. "Hey," Eli said gently, raising his hands in a gesture meant to convey calm. "You're safe. Well, as safe as you can be out here." Her luminous eyes widened slightly, studying him with a mixture of caution and curiosity. Though her face remained unreadable, Eli sensed intelligence behind her gaze, an awareness sharper than any human's. She tried to sit up but winced, clutching her side where the bandages covered her injuries. "Easy," Eli cautioned, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder to steady her. "You're hurt pretty bad. Don't try to move too much." She looked at him again, tilting her head slightly as if trying to decipher his words. Then, after a pause, she spoke, not in English, but in a melodic language filled with flowing syllables and rhythmic tones. To Eli, it sounded like music, each word carrying weight and emotion. "I don't understand," he admitted with a sheepish smile, "but I think we're gonna need to figure out how to talk to each other." Her lips parted again, forming another string of alien sounds before realization dawned on her face. Slowly, she reached out a slender hand toward him, palm upturned. It wasn't aggressive, more like an invitation or plea. Eli hesitated only briefly before taking her hand in his own. Her skin was cool to the touch, smoother than anything he'd ever felt, and faintly tinged with the same blue glow radiating from her armor. When their hands connected, a spark of understanding seemed to pass between them. Not literal communication, but a shared sense of trust. Over the next few hours, they began piecing together a rudimentary form of interaction. Eli pointed to objects around them, a tree, the sun, himself, and repeated their names aloud. She mimicked his gestures, repeating the words haltingly in her lilting voice. Progress was slow, but both were determined. By midday, Eid managed to establish basic vocabulary: tree, water, sky. When Eli tapped his chest and said, "Eli," her eyes lit up. She pressed a finger to her own chest and replied, "Liriel." "Liriel," Eli echoed, testing the name on his tongue. It rolled smoothly, almost regally. He nodded approvingly. "Nice to meet you, Liriel." Though she didn't fully grasp the sentiment, her expression softened into what might have been a smile. Encouraged by this breakthrough, Eli continued teaching her simple phrases. In return, Liriel showed him glimpses of her world using gestures and fragments of images projected from a small device embedded in her gauntlet. Holograms flickered to life, displaying underwater cities bathed in bioluminescent light, towering coral-like structures, and beings who moved with fluid grace. "They're beautiful," Eli murmured, captivated by the scenes. "Your home." Liriel nodded solemnly, then frowned, pointing upward toward the sky. She traced arcs with her fingers, mimicking ships attacking and retreating. Eli watched intently, piecing together the story. She'd been fleeing attackers when her ship crashed. Why she was targeted remained unclear, but her body language suggested betrayal, or perhaps abandonment. "You're safe now," Eli assured her, though he wasn't entirely convinced himself. The thought of hostile forces tracking her sent a chill down his spine. As evening approached, Liriel grew quieter, her earlier enthusiasm giving way to exhaustion. Eli helped her drink water from a canteen, careful not to spill a drop. She seemed grateful, her glowing eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made him feel both honored and humbled. Later, as twilight descended, Eli built a small fire to keep them warm. He rummaged through his pack, pulling out a protein bar and offering it to her. She examined it curiously, sniffing cautiously before taking a tiny bite. Her reaction was comical, eyes widening, nose wrinkling, but she swallowed politely, earning a chuckle from Eli. "Not exactly gourmet, huh?" he joked, unwrapping another bar for himself. Despite the language barrier, moments like these created a bond neither had expected. For Liriel, it was the first time since the attack that she felt anything resembling comfort. For Eli, helping someone so utterly different yet undeniably vulnerable awakened a sense of purpose he hadn't realized he lacked. That night, as they sat by the fire, Liriel pointed to the stars above. Her expression turned wistful, almost longing. Eli followed her gaze, marveling at how clear the sky was without city lights to obscure it. "Do you want to go back there?" he asked, gesturing vaguely at the heavens. She hesitated, then shook her head firmly. "Not yet," her body language implied. There was unfinished business, something she needed to resolve before returning to her world. Eli nodded, respecting her unspoken decision. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he silently vowed to help her face them. After all, she'd entrusted him with her safety, and he wasn't about to let her down. As embers glowed softly in the fire pit, casting flickering shadows across their faces, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter marked the beginning of something extraordinary. Little did he know, the true test of their newfound alliance would arrive sooner than either of them anticipated. The days that followed were a delicate dance of recovery and discovery for both Eli Carter and Liriel. Each sunrise brought new challenges, but also moments of connection that deepened their bond. The forest became their shared sanctuary, a place where two vastly different beings learned to navigate not only the physical world around them, but also the emotional terrain of trust and understanding. Eli took it upon himself to care for Lirael as she healed. He gathered herbs from the surrounding woods, crushing their leaves into poultices that helped reduce swelling in her wounds. Though skeptical at first, her advanced physiology likely surpassed anything Earth could offer. Lirael soon realized Eli's methods worked wonders. Her injuries began to mend more quickly than expected, thanks in part to his careful attention and resourcefulness. In return, Lirael introduced Eli to glimpses of her own world. Using the holographic device embedded in her gauntlet, she projected images of Undarian's underwater cities, shimmering with bioluminescent hues. She showed him schools of fish-like creatures that glided gracefully through crystalline waters and towering coral structures that pulsed with life. These visions captivated Eli, who had spent most of his life studying Earth's flora and fauna. "It's incredible," he said one morning, crouching beside her as she adjusted the projection. "Your world. It feels alive in a way I've never seen before." Lirael smiled faintly, though there was sadness in her eyes. She pointed to herself, then to the hologram, making sweeping gestures over the image of her home. Eli understood what she meant. This was her responsibility. As princess, she carried the weight of her people's future on her shoulders. "You'll get back there," Eli assured her, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "But until then, you're not alone." Her gaze softened, and for a brief moment, the tension in her posture eased. Their communication improved steadily, though it remained a patchwork of gestures, drawings, and halting attempts at language. One afternoon, while sitting by a stream, Eli sketched symbols in the dirt to represent concepts like friend and safe. Lirael studied them intently, repeating the words aloud in her lilting voice. In turn, she taught him phrases in her native tongue, which sounded like flowing water cascading over smooth stones. "Scifi," she said, pointing to herself. "Sava," Eli repeated, furrowing his brow. She nodded enthusiastically, then touched his chest. "Eli." "Close enough," he chuckled, earning a rare grin from her. These small victories filled their days with purpose. For Lirael, learning human customs and language wasn't just practical, it was a reminder of hope. Despite everything she'd lost, she found solace in Eli's unwavering kindness. And for Eli, teaching her became an unexpected source of fulfillment. It reminded him why he'd chosen a life dedicated to nurturing life, whether plant or person. As Lirael grew stronger, they'd ventured further into the forest together. Eli showed her the intricacies of Earth's ecosystem, the way certain plants coexisted symbiotically, how animals adapted to survive in harsh conditions. He marveled at her fascination with even the smallest details, like the dew clinging to spiderwebs or the rhythmic chirping of crickets at dusk. One evening, as they sat beneath a canopy of stars, Lirael reached out to touch a cluster of fireflies dancing around them. Their soft glow illuminated her face, casting shadows that highlighted the regal lines of her features. "They remind me of home," she murmured, using a mix of broken English and gestures. Eli tilted his head, intrigued. "What do you mean?" She pointed to the fireflies, then mimicked their flickering light with her fingers. "Ondarian lights." Understanding dawned on Eli. "Your cities have lights like this, natural ones." She nodded eagerly, pulling up another hologram to show him. This time, the projection depicted streets lined with glowing orbs suspended in midair, casting gentle illumination across bustling markets and serene courtyards. "It's beautiful," Eli said, genuinely awestruck. "You must miss it." Lirael's expression turned somber. She pressed a hand to her chest, then swept it outward toward the horizon. "Miss? Yes, but not ready." Eli frowned, trying to decipher her meaning. "Not ready to go back." She hesitated, then nodded. There was something unresolved, something she hadn't told him yet. Despite the progress they made, Lirael's past continued to haunt her. Late at night, when Eli thought she was asleep, he'd catch her staring at the stars with an unreadable expression. Sometimes she muttered words in her native tongue, her voice tinged with frustration or sorrow. Other times, she traced patterns in the dirt with trembling fingers, erasing them before Eli could see what they were. One particularly restless night, Eli decided to broach the subject. Sitting beside her by the fire, he asked gently, "What happened to you, Lirael? Why were you attacked?" She stiffened, her glowing eyes locking onto his. For a long moment, she didn't respond. Then, slowly, she began drawing shapes in the dirt, an angular symbol resembling a crest, followed by jagged lines radiating outward. "Attackers," she said, pointing to the lines. Eli leaned closer, piecing together her explanation. "Someone betrayed you." She nodded, her jaw tightening. With deliberate movements, she added more symbols: a crown, a ship, and finally, a fractured line splitting the crown in half. "You were fleeing because of betrayal," Eli concluded, his voice low. "Your own people." Lirael hesitated, then shook her head firmly. Not her people, but someone close to them. Someone powerful. Though Eli couldn't fully grasp the specifics, he understood enough to know that Lirael's situation was far more complicated than he'd initially thought. Whatever, or whoever, had driven her here wasn't finished with her yet. The next day, they'd returned to the crash site to salvage what they could from the wreckage. Lirael insisted on coming, despite Eli's protests about her still healing injuries. Together, they sifted through twisted metal and charred debris, searching for anything useful. Among the ruins, Lirael found a fragment of her communicator device. Its surface was cracked, and its circuits sparked faintly when she touched it. Her face lit up with cautious optimism. "Fix?" she asked, holding it out to Eli. He examined the device carefully, turning it over in his hands. "I don't know much about alien tech," he admitted, "but if I can figure out how it works, maybe we can send a signal to your people." Lirael placed a hand on his shoulder, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Eli." For the first time since the crash, she seemed hopeful, not just for herself, but for the possibility of reconnecting with her world. Yet even as they worked side by side, repairing the communicator piece by piece, a shadow loomed over them. Deep in the forest, faint vibrations hinted at movement, something unnatural, something watching. Eli noticed it too, pausing mid-repair to glance warily at the tree line. "Do you feel that?" Lirael's expression grew grim. She nodded, her fingers curling into fists. Whoever had pursued her hadn't given up. "We'll deal with it later," Eli said firmly, forcing a smile. "Right now, let's focus on getting you home." Lirael met his gaze, resolve hardening in her eyes. Home might still be distant, but with Eli by her side, she felt a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Together, they would face whatever came next, and emerge stronger for it. The forest, once a haven of peace and safety for Eli Carter and Lirael, now felt like a trap. Days had passed since they began repairing the communicator salvaged from the wreckage, and though progress was slow, hope lingered in their hearts. But with every passing hour, the sense of being watched grew stronger, a creeping unease that neither could ignore. It started subtly, twigs snapping in the distance when no wind stirred, birds scattering suddenly from branches above, the faint hum of something mechanical, barely audible but unmistakably unnatural. Eli's instincts screamed at him to stay alert, while Lirael's sharp senses confirmed his fears. They weren't alone. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Eli knelt beside the makeshift workbench he'd set up near their campsite. Fragments of the communicator lay scattered across the surface, glowing faintly as he pieced them together using tools scavenged from his cabin. Beside him, Lirael hovered anxiously, her elongated fingers tracing the edges of the device, as if willing it to spring back to life. "We're close," Eli muttered, adjusting the circuit board with tweezers. "If we can stabilize this power core, we might be able to send a signal." Lirael nodded, her luminous eyes reflecting both determination and apprehension. She glanced toward the tree line. where shadows stretched long and dark against the fading light. Something moved, a fleeting flicker too quick for Eli to notice. But Lirael stiffened immediately. "Eli," she whispered urgently, pointing toward the trees. Eli followed her gaze, squinting into the gloom. At first he saw nothing but swaying branches and shifting shadows. Then, a glint of metal caught his eye, a drone-like probe hovering silently just beyond the tree line. Its sleek design bore no resemblance to anything human-made, confirming what they already suspected. The enemy had found them. "Stay low," Eli hissed, grabbing Lirael's arm and pulling her behind a fallen log. They crouched together, hearts pounding as the probe drifted closer, scanning the area with pulsating red lights. It emitted a low whine, almost imperceptible, but enough to make their skin crawl. "They know I'm here," Lirael murmured, her voice trembling with anger rather than fear. "They won't stop until—" "Until what?" Eli pressed, gripping her shoulder firmly. "Until I'm gone," she finished grimly. Eli shook his head, refusing to accept defeat. "Not on my watch. We'll find a way out of this." For all his reassurance, even Eli knew their options were limited. The probe wasn't acting alone. It was likely part of a larger search effort. If reinforcements arrived, they wouldn't stand a chance. Their only advantage was time, and the dense forest surrounding them. That night, under the cover of darkness, Eli devised a plan. Using materials from the crash site and his own ingenuity, he constructed decoys designed to mimic heat signatures. He rigged small fires with damp leaves to create thick smoke, hoping to confuse any sensors tracking them. Meanwhile, Lirael used her telekinetic abilities, limited but effective, to manipulate objects in the distance, creating distractions that drew the probes away from their location. "It's working," Eli whispered as they watched one of the drones veer off course, lured by the false signals. "Now we move." With painstaking care, they packed up their supplies and slipped deeper into the wilderness. Every step was deliberate, every sound muffled. Lirael led the way, her heightened senses guiding them through the labyrinth of trees. Eli followed closely, clutching the partially repaired communicator in a protective grip. Despite their precautions, the forest seemed alive with unseen threats. More probes appeared sporadically, forcing them to change direction multiple times. Each encounter left them more exhausted, both physically and mentally. Yet through it all, Lirael remained resolute, her regal bearing undiminished even in the face of danger. "You're tougher than you look," Eli remarked during a brief rest stop, handing her a canteen of water. She smirked faintly, taking a sip before replying, "And you are braver than most humans." Her words startled him, not because of their content, but because they marked the first time she'd spoken so directly about humanity as a whole. "Most humans wouldn't do this," he admitted, gesturing to their precarious situation. "But I'm not most humans." "No," she agreed softly, her gaze softening. "You are special." Their journey took them further from the crash site, deeper into uncharted territory. By dawn, they reached a rocky ravine, its jagged cliffs providing natural cover. Exhausted but determined, they settled into a narrow crevice, hidden from view. As the sun rose, casting golden rays over the landscape, Lirael finally opened up about the events leading to her crash. Through broken English and vivid gestures, she recounted how a faction within Ondarian, an extremist group seeking dominance over neighboring worlds, had orchestrated the ambush. They viewed her diplomatic mission as a threat to their plans and sought to eliminate her to secure their power. "But why abandon you?" Eli asked, frowning. "Why not finish the job?" Lirael hesitated, her expression clouded with shame. "Because I failed. My crew sacrificed themselves to save me, and still I let them down. They thought I would die here, forgotten." Eli listened intently, his heart aching for her pain. "You didn't fail," he said firmly. "You survived. And survival isn't failure, it's strength. You have people counting on you back home, right?" That's worth fighting for. Tears welled in her luminescent eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. For the first time since meeting her, Eli saw vulnerability beneath her regal exterior, a reminder that even royalty could feel lost and afraid. Later that day, as they worked to complete the communicator, a new challenge arose. A trio of drones converged on their position, their movements coordinated and precise. Escape seemed impossible. "We can't outrun them," Eli said grimly, clutching a jagged piece of metal like a weapon. Liriel placed a hand on his arm, shaking her head. "No running. This time, we fight." Summoning every ounce of courage, they stood side by side, ready to defend themselves. Liriel raised her hands, her telekinetic energy crackling faintly as she prepared to strike. Eli tightened his grip on the makeshift weapon, his resolve unwavering. As the drones closed in, Liriel unleashed a burst of energy, sending one crashing into the rocks. Eli lunged at another, smashing its lens with brute force. Though outnumbered, their teamwork proved formidable. Just as victory seemed within reach, a deafening roar echoed through the ravine. A massive ship descended from the sky, its hull emblazoned with symbols Eli didn't recognize. Reinforcements had arrived, but whose side were they on? Liriel's eyes widened in recognition. "Ondarian," she breathed, relief washing over her face. The ship landed nearby, and armed figures emerged, not enemies, but allies. Her people had come for her at last. As Liriel embraced her rescuers, tears streaming down her cheeks, Eli stepped back, feeling a mix of pride and bittersweet sadness. Their time together had been fleeting, yet transformative. "You did it," he said quietly, approaching her as the others secured the area. "No," she corrected, turning to face him. "We did it." The arrival of the Ondarian warship marked a turning point for Eli Carter and Liriel, though not in the way either had anticipated. As the massive vessel descended into the ravine, its sleek design casting long shadows over the rocky terrain, Liriel felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Relief washed over her at the sight of her people, her family. But guilt lingered too. She had failed them once. Would they trust her again? For Eli, the scene was surreal. The ship's landing created a gust of wind that flattened nearby bushes and sent loose rocks skittering across the ground. Figures clad in shimmering armor stepped out, their movements fluid and precise. They carried weapons unlike anything on Earth, glowing faintly with energy. Though they appeared intimidating, their demeanor softened when they saw Liriel. "Princess," one of them said, bowing deeply. His voice carried a melodic tone similar to Liriel's, though it held an edge of urgency. "We feared the worst." Byronth of trees. Eli followed closely, clutching the partially repaired communicator in a protective grip. Despite their precautions, the forest seemed alive with unseen threats. More probes appeared sporadically, forcing them to change direction multiple times. Each encounter left them more exhausted, both physically and mentally. Yet through it all, Liriel remained resolute, her regal bearing undiminished even in the face of danger. "You're tougher than you look," Eli remarked during a brief rest stop, handing her a canteen of water. She smirked faintly, taking a sip before replying, "And you are braver than most humans." Her words startled him, not because of their content, but because they marked the first time she'd spoken so directly about humanity as a whole. "Most humans wouldn't do this," he admitted, gesturing to their precarious situation. "But I'm not most humans." "No," she agreed softly, her gaze softening. "You are special." Their journey took them further from the crash site, deeper into uncharted territory. By dawn, they reached a rocky ravine, its jagged cliffs providing natural cover. Exhausted but determined, they settled into a narrow crevice, hidden from view. As the sun rose, casting golden rays over the landscape, Liriel finally opened up about the events leading to her crash. Through broken English and vivid gestures, she recounted how a faction within Ondarian, an extremist group seeking dominance over neighboring worlds, had orchestrated the ambush. They viewed her diplomatic mission as a threat to their plans and sought to eliminate her to secure their power. "But why abandon you?" Eli asked, frowning. "Why not finish the job?" Lirael hesitated, her expression clouded with shame. "Because I failed. My crew sacrificed themselves to save me, and still I let them down. They thought I would die here, forgotten." Eli listened intently, his heart aching for her pain. "You didn't fail," he said firmly. "You survived. And survival isn't failure, it's strength. You have people counting on you back home, right? That's worth fighting for." Tears welled in her luminescent eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. For the first time since meeting her, Eli saw vulnerability beneath her regal exterior, a reminder that even royalty could feel lost and afraid. Later that day, as they worked to complete the communicator, a new challenge arose. A trio of drones converged on their position, their movements coordinated and precise. Escape seemed impossible. "We can't outrun them," Eli said grimly, clutching a jagged piece of metal like a weapon. Lirael placed a hand on his arm, shaking her head. "No running. This time, we fight." Summoning every ounce of courage, they stood side by side, ready to defend themselves. Lirael raised her hands, her telekinetic energy crackling faintly as she prepared to strike. Eli tightened his grip on the makeshift weapon, his resolve unwavering. As the drones closed in, Lirael unleashed a burst of energy, sending one crashing into the rocks. Eli lunged at another, smashing its lens with brute force. Though outnumbered, their teamwork proved formidable. Just as victory seemed within reach, a deafening roar echoed through the ravine. A massive ship descended from the sky, its hull emblazoned with symbols Eli didn't recognize. Reinforcements had arrived, but whose side were they on? Lirael's eyes widened in recognition. "Ondarian," she breathed, relief washing over her face. The ship landed nearby, and armed figures emerged, not enemies, but allies. Her people had come for her at last. As Lirael embraced her rescuers, tears streaming down her cheeks, Eli stepped back, feeling a mix of pride and bittersweet sadness. Their time together had been fleeting, yet transformative. "You did it," he said quietly, approaching her as the others secured the area. "No," she corrected, turning to face him. "We did it." The arrival of the Ondarian warship marked a turning point for Eli Carter and Lirael, though not in the way either had anticipated. As the massive vessel descended into the ravine, its sleek design casting long shadows over the rocky terrain, Lirael felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Relief washed over her at the sight of her people, her family. But guilt lingered too. She had failed them once. Would they trust her again? For Eli, the scene was surreal. The ship's landing created a gust of wind that flattened nearby bushes and sent loose rocks skittering across the ground. Figures clad in shimmering armor stepped out, their movements fluid and precise. They carried weapons unlike anything on Earth, glowing faintly with energy. Though they appeared intimidating, their demeanor softened when they saw Lirael. "Princess," one of them said, bowing deeply. His voice carried a melodic tone similar to Lirael's, though it held an edge of urgency. "We feared the worst." Lirael straightened, her regal bearing returning as she addressed them. "I am unharmed, thanks to." She paused, glancing at Eli, who stood slightly apart from the group. An ally. The soldiers turned their attention to him, studying him with curiosity and caution. Eli raised his hand slowly, palms open, signaling he meant no harm. "This human saved me," Lirael continued, her voice firm. "Without him, I would not be standing here." The lead soldier nodded respectfully, though his expression remained guarded. "We are grateful for your assistance, but this matter concerns Ondarian. It is best you remain here while we secure the princess." Eli frowned, stepping forward despite the wary glances from the armored figures. "Hold on. You think I'm just gonna step aside after everything we've been through? Lirael's safety isn't just your responsibility. It's mine too." If those rogue forces are still out there, she's not safe yet. Liriel placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle but firm. Eli, they are right. This is my fight now. No, Eli countered, meeting her gaze. It's ours. Those attackers won't stop, not until they're sure you're gone. You know that as well as I do. His words hung in the air, resonating with truth. After a tense silence, the lead soldier exchanged a glance with his comrades before addressing Eli. Very well, he conceded, but understand this. Our mission is to protect the princess at all costs. Do not interfere unless absolutely necessary. Eli nodded, accepting the terms. Whatever doubts these soldiers had about him, he knew proving himself wasn't going to happen overnight. For now, being allowed to stay by Liriel's side was enough. As the group prepared to leave, Liriel took a moment to speak privately with Eli. Pulling him aside, she handed him a small crystal pendant, a fragment salvaged from her damaged armor. It pulsed faintly with light, humming softly when touched. This will help you communicate, she explained, pointing to the device embedded in his palm. If we are separated, use it to call for me. Eli examined the pendant, marveling at its intricate design. Thank you, he said sincerely. But promise me one thing, don't try to face this alone. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself anymore. Her eyes softened, gratitude shining in their luminescent depths. You remind me of my people's greatest strength, the ability to unite, even in the darkest times. Perhaps humans are more like us than I realized. Before Eli could respond, the others signaled that it was time to move. Together, they boarded the warship, its interior bathed in soft blue light that seemed almost alive. Panels lined the walls, displaying holographic maps and tactical data. The hum of advanced technology filled the air, a stark contrast to the simplicity of Eli's cabin back home. Once aboard, Liriel briefed her team on the situation, explaining the ambush, her crash, and the relentless pursuit by rogue forces. Her account painted a grim picture. The faction responsible wasn't just targeting her, they sought to destabilize Ondarian itself, using fear and violence to seize control. We cannot allow them to succeed, the lead soldier declared, his voice steely. Our priority is to return the princess safely to Ondarian. From there, we can mount a counteroffensive. Eli listened intently, piecing together the stakes. Though he didn't fully grasp the political complexities of Liriel's world, he understood one thing clearly. This conflict was far bigger than any of them, and if they hoped to survive, they'd need every advantage they could muster, including humanity's ingenuity. The journey back to Ondarian would take several hours, during which time Eli observed the crew's preparations with keen interest. He noticed how seamlessly they worked together, each member contributing their skills without hesitation. It reminded him of the rural communities he encountered in his travels. People coming together for a common cause, regardless of individual differences. Inspired, Eli approached Liriel with an idea. Your people have incredible technology, but sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. Back on Earth, we rely on teamwork and resourcefulness to overcome challenges. Maybe there's something we can teach each other. Intrigued, Liriel invited him to share his thoughts. Over the next hour, Eli outlined a plan to use Earth's natural resources, combined with Ondarian tech, to create decoys capable of misleading the enemy. By mimicking heat signatures and energy signals, they could buy themselves valuable time. The soldiers listened skeptically at first, but as Eli demonstrated his concepts using diagrams and prototypes he'd brought from the wreckage, their skepticism gave way to admiration. He is clever, one of them remarked, nodding approvingly. Perhaps humans truly are allies worth having. Liriel smiled, pride evident in her expression. I told you, he is special. As the warship neared Ondarian's orbit, tension mounted. Scans revealed multiple hostile vessels lying in wait, ready to intercept them. The rogue faction had anticipated their return and intended to finish what they started. We'll have to fight our way through, the lead soldier announced grimly. "Prepare for battle." Eli tightened his grip on the communicator fragment, determination hardening his features. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready. Not because he sought glory or revenge, but because giving up wasn't an option. Not when so much depended on their success. Luriel joined him at the viewport, gazing out at the swirling colors of her homeworld below. "This is where it ends," she said quietly. "For better or worse." Eli placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then let's make sure it ends the right way." Together, they turned to face the impending storm, united by a bond forged in adversity. Whether fighting alongside aliens or defending a wounded princess, Eli had discovered something profound. True strength came not from power or technology, but from connection. The warship shuddered violently as it entered Undarian's atmosphere, its shields straining under a barrage of enemy fire. Outside the viewport, streaks of energy illuminated the dark void of space, each bolt narrowly missing their vessel. Inside, the tension was palpable. Soldiers moved with precision, manning control panels and preparing for what promised to be a fierce battle. Eli Carter, seated beside Luriel, gripped the armrests tightly as the ship rocked again. His knuckles turned white, but his expression remained resolute. He glanced at Luriel, who sat upright despite her still healing injuries, her eyes locked on the tactical display showing the hostile fleet closing in. "We're outnumbered," one of the soldiers reported, his voice calm but urgent. "Their weapons are more advanced than expected." Luriel nodded grimly. They'd been preparing for this moment. "We must act quickly." Turning to Eli, she gestured toward the communicator fragment he held. "We need that signal now. If we can contact Ondarian directly, they'll send reinforcements. But it has to be strong enough to penetrate the interference." Eli nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. With trembling hands, he retrieved the partially repaired device and connected it to a power source provided by the crew. Sparks flew as he adjusted the circuits, sweat dripping down his forehead from both effort and anxiety. "Can you stabilize the frequency?" Luriel asked, leaning closer to guide him through the process. "I think so," Eli replied, focusing intently. Using knowledge gleaned from repairing Earth-based electronics, he improvised a solution, rerouting energy flows to amplify the signal. "If I boost the output too much, it could fry the system entirely. But if we don't try..." He trailed off, letting the unspoken consequence hang in the air. Failure wasn't an option, not when lives depended on it. Meanwhile, the rogue faction's ships continued their relentless assault. Plasma bolts struck the warship's hull, causing alarms to blare and lights to flicker. Despite the chaos, the Ondarian crew worked seamlessly, coordinating evasive maneuvers while returning fire. Their weapons were no match for the enemy's firepower, but their skill kept them alive. For now. Eli glanced up periodically, watching as explosions lit up the darkness outside. Each blast brought them closer to disaster, yet also closer to hope. "It's ready," he announced finally, holding up the communicator. Its surface glowed brighter than before, pulsating with a steady rhythm. "But I don't know how long it'll last once activated." Luriel took the device carefully, her fingers brushing against his. "Thank you, Eli. You've done more than anyone could ask." Before Eli could respond, the lead soldier interrupted. "Princess, we're approaching the planet's defensive grid. Once inside, we'll lose line-of-sight communication. Activate the signal now." Luriel pressed a button on the communicator, triggering a high-pitched hum that filled the cabin. A beam of light shot outward, piercing through the chaos like a beacon. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then, faintly at first but growing louder, came a response, a series of tones indicating a successful connection. "They received it," Luriel exclaimed, relief washing over her face. "Help is coming." But celebration was short-lived. One of the rogue ships broke formation, accelerating toward them with terrifying speed. It launched a missile directly at the warship, leaving no time to evade. "Brace for impact." the lead soldier shouted. The explosion rocked the vessel, throwing everyone off balance. Smoke filled the cabin as sparks rained down from damaged systems. Eli shielded Lirael instinctively, his body forming a protective barrier between her and the debris. When the smoke cleared, the damage was evident. The ship's engines were crippled, and their shields were nearly depleted. "We won't survive another hit," the lead soldier said grimly. "Prepare for evacuation." As orders echoed through the cabin, Lirael refused to abandon ship. "We can't leave. The signal needs protection until reinforcements arrive." "You heard the order," Eli insisted, pulling her toward the escape pods. "You're no good to anyone dead." She hesitated, torn between duty and survival. Finally, she relented, allowing Eli to guide her into one of the pods. As the hatch sealed shut behind them, the warship began breaking apart, consumed by flames and explosions. The pod jettisoned just in time, hurtling toward Underian's surface. Through the small window, Eli and Lirael watched as the remnants of the warship plummeted into the ocean below, creating a massive splash visible even from orbit. "Hold on," Eli muttered, gripping the controls. "This ride might get rough." The descent was harrowing. The pod buffeted by atmospheric turbulence. Heat seared the exterior, turning the interior uncomfortably warm. Yet neither spoke. They simply clung to each other, drawing strength from their shared resolve. When the pod finally landed with a thud in a dense jungle, Eli exhaled sharply. "Well, that could have gone worse." Lirael managed a weak laugh, though exhaustion weighed heavily on her features. "You have a strange sense of humor, Eli." Stepping out into the humid air, they surveyed their surroundings. Towering trees stretched skyward, their branches intertwined to form a canopy overhead. Bioluminescent plants cast an ethereal glow, illuminating the forest floor. Though beautiful, the environment felt alien and dangerous. "We need to find cover," Eli said, scanning the tree line. "If those ships track us here, we're sitting ducks." Lirael agreed, activating the crystal pendant she'd given him earlier. A holographic map materialized, displaying their location relative to nearby settlements. "There's a village not far from here. My people often trade with them. They may offer sanctuary." With renewed purpose, they set off through the jungle, navigating obstacles with cautious determination. Every step reminded them of the stakes, not just for Lirael, but for Underian itself. Hours later, as dawn approached, they reached the edge of the village. Lights twinkled among the trees, revealing structures made of coral-like material that pulsed gently with internal energy. Villagers emerged cautiously, their expressions wary but curious. Lirael stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "I am Princess Lirael of Underian. We seek refuge from those who wish harm upon my people." The villagers murmured among themselves before bowing respectfully. One elder approached, speaking in melodic tones. "We will protect you, Your Highness. But beware, the enemy grows bolder with each passing day." Eli translated the gist of the conversation for himself, piecing together the warning. Though grateful for the villagers' hospitality, he knew their safety was temporary. Reinforcements from Underian would take time to arrive, and until then, they remained vulnerable. As they settled into the village, Lirael turned to Eli, her gaze unwavering. "This isn't over." "Not yet." "No," Eli agreed, meeting her stare with equal determination. "But we've made it this far. Together, we'll see it through." For all the challenges ahead, one truth became clear. Their bond had become something greater than friendship. It was a partnership forged in adversity, uniting two worlds in pursuit of a brighter future. The village nestled within Underian's lush jungles became a temporary haven for Eli Carter and Lirael, though neither could fully relax. The threat of the rogue faction loomed large, casting a shadow over their brief respite. Yet amidst the uncertainty there was also hope, a fragile but persistent belief that they could overcome the odds stacked against them. The villagers welcomed Lirael with reverence, treating her not just as royalty, but as a symbol of unity in troubled times. They shared stories of her diplomatic efforts to foster peace between neighboring worlds, painting her as a beacon of hope. Eli listened intently, marveling at how much she had accomplished despite her young age. It made him realize why the rogue faction feared her so deeply. She represented everything they sought to destroy. For Eli, the experience was surreal. He had spent most of his life avoiding people, retreating into solitude to escape the complexities of human society. Now he found himself surrounded by beings who were fundamentally different yet undeniably kind. Their curiosity about him mirrored his fascination with them, creating an unspoken bow that transcended language barriers. One evening, as the village gathered around a glowing bioluminescent pool, the elder addressed the crowd. "We owe our gratitude to this human," he said, gesturing toward Eli. Without his courage, Princess Liriel might never have survived. Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly, and several villagers approached Eli, offering gifts, small trinkets imbued with energy or crafted from materials alien to Earth. Though modest, these tokens carried immense significance, signifying acceptance and trust. Eli accepted them humbly, bowing slightly in thanks. "I only did what anyone would have done," he replied, glancing at Liriel. But Liriel shook her head, her luminous eyes reflecting pride. "No, Eli, you are extraordinary. Few humans, and even fewer beings from other worlds, would risk so much for someone they barely knew." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For years, he doubted his place in the universe, feeling insignificant compared to the vastness of space. But here, among these strangers turned allies, he felt valued, not for what he could achieve alone, but for what he could contribute together with others. As days passed, reinforcements finally arrived. A fleet of Ondarian warships descended upon the village, their arrival heralded by a symphony of lights and sounds that filled the air with awe. Soldiers disembarked, their armor gleaming as they formed ranks around Liriel. Among them was Admiral Kalen, a high-ranking officer known for his strategic brilliance and unwavering loyalty to the crown. "Princess," Kalen greeted, kneeling before her. "We came as soon as we received your signal. Are you injured?" "I am well, thanks to my companion," Liriel replied, motioning toward Eli. "And to these villagers, who sheltered us when we needed it most." Kalen rose, turning his attention to Eli. "You have earned our eternal gratitude, human. Your actions will not be forgotten." Eli nodded, feeling a mix of pride and humility. "I didn't do it for recognition. I just wanted to help." The Admiral studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "A rare quality indeed. Perhaps humanity is more deserving of alliance than we once believed." With reinforcements secured, plans were set into motion to confront the rogue faction. Using intelligence gathered during their journey, along with insights provided by the villagers, Liriel and Kalen devised a strategy to neutralize the threat. The battle would be fierce, but with unity on their side, victory seemed attainable. Before departing, Liriel took Eli aside, her expression tinged with sadness. "This is where we must part ways," she said softly. "My duty calls me back to Ondarian, to lead my people through this crisis." Eli nodded, though his heart ached at the thought of saying goodbye. "I understand. This is your home, your responsibility. But remember, you don't have to carry it all on your own. You've got allies now, including me." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "You remind me of something I almost forgot. That strength comes not from standing alone, but from reaching out to others. Thank you, Eli, for showing me that." Reaching into her gauntlet, she retrieved another crystal pendant, similar to the one she'd given him earlier, but larger and more intricate. "Take this. It contains records of our journey, memories of Earth, and instructions for communication. Should you ever need us, or wish to visit, you'll find a way." Eli accepted the gift, clutching it tightly. "I'll treasure it always. And maybe someday I'll come see Ondarian for myself." Her smile widened, lighting up her face. Until then, may your path be bright and your skies clear. As the warships ascended into the heavens, leaving trails of light behind them, Eli stood watching alongside the villagers. Though bittersweet, the moment felt right. Closure after a whirlwind adventure that had changed his life forever. Returning to his cabin in the forest, Eli found solace in familiar routines, yet everything felt different now. The trees seemed taller, the stars brighter, and the world infinitely larger. He no longer saw himself as a mere observer of nature. Instead, he viewed it as part of something greater, a tapestry woven with countless threads, each contributing to the whole. On quiet nights, Eli would pull out the crystal pendant, activating its holographic display. Images of Undarian cities, its people, and its beauty filled the room, reminding him of the bond he'd forged with Luriel and her world. And though miles separated them, he knew their connection remained strong, a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and collaboration. Far above, aboard the Ondarian flagship, Luriel gazed at Earth through a viewport, clutching the memory of Eli's kindness. She vowed to lead her people with the same selflessness she'd witnessed on that small blue planet, a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could